You mentioned the illusion of control and let people learn where and how they want. You feel that works best?
I really do, because I think that what we're finding now, we did some research through Degreed last year where we asked how the workforce learns. And one of the things that we found is that this is the reality of it. Whether companies want to realize it or not, employees are learning on their own all the time. They're spending their own time and they're spending their own money on learning because they're not getting what they need from their corporate learning group at their company. And so they're, as much as CEOs are worried about their employees not having the skills that they need to be successful in the future, employees are worried too. Employers are worried that they don't have the skills that are going to help them stay relevant in the workplace moving forward. So they're taking it into their own hands to say, well, if my company's not going to provide this for me, I will actually go out and do that myself. So that's the reality of the situation. So then if you take that into consideration and say, okay, if our employees aren't getting what they need, maybe we can rethink our learning strategy at our company so that employees can get the learning that they need, and we're empowering them to learn what they want when they need it on the job. And I think that becomes so much more powerful than this illusion that companies can say, we know what skills our employees need and exactly what they need to learn and how they need to learn it. It sounds a little crazy when you put it in those terms, but that's basically what we've been saying. And I think that there's also a happy medium. Again, I would say companies have this great role to play in guiding, employees, because sometimes there are employees that don't know, like what's next or what should I be doing next. And companies can be great at guiding their employees and saying, these are the trends that we see happening in the future. We hear Unilever is a great example of actually saying, we're taking it from both perspectives. As a company, we're saying, here are the skills that we think are going to be most important to Unilever moving forward. And here are some of the skills in each of the functional areas that we think from a Unilever perspective that are very, very important. And then they're saying, but we also want you to think about personalized learning. Figure out where your strengths are. Figure out do a self-assessment against your own skills and understand what skills you have and what skills you need. And then take it upon yourself to put together a personalized learning plan where you can actually start building the skills that you want and need for your career now and for the future. And then if you think about marrying those two things, the guidance from the company and the interests of the employees and where they are, because people are motivated by their career and what's next, right? They get excited about that. So you put that combination together, and how cool is that? That's really a way that I think learning can be a huge competitive advantage and something that that's really key to a company strategy.
And this is basically the steps that you just laid out about creating that culture of continuous learning on the job.
Yes, and continuous learning, a lot of people don't realize, that continuous learning means that learning isn't just a one-time event. A lot of times people will think, oh, we're running, let's say that they really want to focus on diversity at their company. And so somebody will come up with an idea, why don't we give all of our employees diversity training or unconscious bias training, which, by the way, we've shown isn't very effective. It's like a one-size-fits-all training that doesn't really have the impact I think that companies think they will. But then they'll say, okay, they measure that by saying, okay, everybody in our company took that training and they participated, and so problem fixed. Everybody should now be, trained against being conscious about what their biases are, problem solved, we can move on. That is not the way learning really works. Learning is not a one-time event, and it's not just about communicating and imparting knowledge on people. It's a continuous learning cycle where, again, if we go back to that simple learning loop where you get knowledge, you practice skills on the job, you're actually getting feedback about how you're doing against those skills, and then you're actually reflecting on what you've done. That's a continuous learning process, and it's not a one-time event. You have to build that into the flow of work so that every day you're conscious that, oh, I'm learning something new. How did I do on that? And that you're building skills continuously throughout your career, rather than just being asked to do what's, required learning, if that makes sense.
Well, it leads right into the next question of personalized learning, where the student is the teacher.
Yes. So I love the notion of personalized learning, and I think some people have the wrong idea about that it just means that people are isolated and learning on their own and they're not interacting with people. But that's not really what personalized learning is at all. I mean, personalized learning is saying everybody's on a different part of their learning journey, and we all come to the table with things we already know and we want to build on that. So personalized learning is about getting a good assessment of who you are and where you are in your learning and or skills journey, assessing yourself against skills, and then saying, where do I have skill gaps and where do I want to focus my skills? And I guarantee you that that's going to be different for every employee in the company, right? I don't care if you got the same degree at the same school at the same time, or even doing the same job. If you ask somebody to assess themselves in their skills, they're going to be at a different place than the person next to them that had those same things. And so this notion that we can create these learning programs that are for everybody, that one size fits all, is what's really broken about the current model of corporate learning. And if we think about personalized learning, then all of a sudden somebody can put together a plan for themselves to say, this is a skill that I'm weak at, that I really want to get better at for my career. And here's my learning plan or my learning goal to help me get better at that skill that I want to grow at. And then they can see progress against that learning goal, and then keep creating goals for themselves as a continuous lifelong learner. It never stops because you can always learn new things.
And that would also combat content overload, because then people are taking it as they need it.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about, personalized learning, what we do at Degreed is we actually are helping to solve this content overload problem. So, for example, if we take what we just talked about, you've got a learning goal and you want to learn a new skill. Say you want to learn better communication skills or presentation skills, and you feel like that's one area that you want to get stronger at as a skill. Then the next thing you want to do for personalized learning is say, okay, well, what learning am I then going to do in order to get better at that skill? If you were to go out in the world and say, there are thousands of pieces of content, learning content around presentation skills or getting better at communication skills, how do I make sense of it all? How do I know what content is good or most relevant for me? And that's the challenge that we have with, we're in an information abundant world, where it used to be an information scarce world, where we only had a little bit of information to give to people. Now there's so much information. The challenge is, what should I be focusing my time on, and how do I know what's good and most relevant? So what Degreed is doing is actually two things: allowing you to actually get curated content to say, oh, if you want to learn about presentation skills, we've actually put together a list of learning that we think can be most relevant and effective for you. And it might include a podcast, it might include a class, it might include a video or a book or a chapter of a book to read. And then once a person goes through this curated content list of assets, then they can actually say, okay, I've gone through this, I've gotten better at this skill, and then they can actually do a self-assessment again, or get their manager to assess them right in the product and see how they're doing against that skill. So I think that's one of the ways we're combating content overload. In addition to that, we're also using machine learning, which means if you think about Spotify for music, if people are using that, what you find is that there's playlists for music based on what you like and what you liked before. Same thing, machine learning will say, oh, you're interested in learning about this topic, we can provide you content that's relevant to that topic, and then you can look at that content and it'll serve up new content to you every day. And as it gets to know you better and what you like to learn and your preferences of learning, it'll continue to serve up content for you based on what it knows about you and what you like to learn. So there's a couple of different ways to combat content overload, and those are a couple of examples.